Finally, I get her to sit down next to me so we can talk in front of my cell phone.
And it only took him like 2 weeks to convince me to do this video.
It took quite a while. She had to put her makeup on, can you tell?
That was my excuse for several days.
Several days? It was like 3 weeks. Oh, it'll be on the bloopers.
He's just so tall that it looked like I rolled my eyes. I think every teacher has this thought. He said I need to smile.
That's her smile.
And be close to him. This is how he's going to interview all of his interviewees.
No, that would be weird. You know this is all going into the video.
Oh, whatever.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited. I get to interview my wife. She is a teacher. She's been a teacher for 20 years now. I just thought that since I have been a principal for 15 years, I'd like to get back down to my roots and talk to the people who really make the schools run. And those are the teachers. So I'd like to welcome Kelly Worsencroft to my channel. And Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you became a teacher?
Well, I've been teaching now for 20 years. I started my career out as a reading interventionist, but one in my own classroom, and then found a job teaching third grade. And I taught third grade for probably about 14 years now, and I just switched back to reading intervention. I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher when I first started college, and actually started out as a business major. I was planning on becoming an accountant. And then throughout my freshman year, I started wondering if that really was for me. And it wasn't until in the spring of my freshman year, my great aunt, who was a hearing impaired educator, passed away. She was a hearing impaired educator for the School of the Deaf down in Columbus, Ohio. And I just remember her funeral very vividly. The deaf community is a very close-knit community in the first place. However, my aunt taught elementary for the hearing impaired, and she taught many hearing impaired students to actually use their voice and speak along with sign language, and she changed their lives so much that at her funeral, we have a smaller family, and we filled a couple pews. The rest of the church was filled, including outside. And I saw what a difference she made. That's when I realized that becoming an accountant wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a difference like her. So, and then as I looked back on it, I realized all the jobs I had had as a teenager involved kids. I taught swim lessons, I coached swim teams, I was a camp counselor, and everything that I did and enjoyed had to do with educating kids or teaching kids in a passion. So that's when I changed my major to education.
Thank you. I've heard that story many times, but it's just as sincere every time she tells it. You answered two of my next questions, which was, why did you want to become a teacher and what inspired you? So do you think it was your aunt that inspired you to become a teacher?
I do think so. Along with her, and then her daughter, my Aunt Terry, is an educator too. And just seeing the difference that I was able to shadow her for a week while in college, and just seeing the things that she did, the great things that she did. So yeah, the two of them were a big inspiration to me to become an educator.
Kelly, can you share with me and our viewers here, what's one thing that a student did that just made your day?
Well, I feel every day kids are making my day in all sorts of little ways. Little ones, they just say things that make you laugh, and they're just intrinsically good and kind. They're such helpers and always wanting to make you happy. So, all day long, they're trying to make you happy. A couple things that come to mind when I think about that. One is, I'll never forget a Christmas gift that I got from a little boy, maybe 10 years ago. A lot of the kids the week before Christmas break would be bringing in, different gifts for me and whatnot. And the last day before break, he brought in a little package, and it was wrapped in lined paper. So it wasn't even wrapped in Christmas paper. And then when I opened it up, it just had a little note that said, "Merry Christmas, love," the student's name, with a little dollar bill folded in it. And that family did not have much. And that's a gift I will remember forever. As opposed to that Christmas, I got numerous other gifts from other families that were absolutely wonderful gifts. And I don't want to make them seem less, but that gift was from that student. He wanted to give me something, and that made me feel really special. That was probably the only dollar he had. He wanted to share that with me. Another thing that actually just made my day in the last couple weeks was I had a student. He was one of those students that I had watched him in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and I had watched him grow from a kindergartner who struggled with behavior, and he wanted to be, do good, but he just would make that, wrong choices. And when he finally got to me in third grade, I was excited to have him in my class, and I built a really great relationship with him, and he means a lot to me. And I kept in contact with his family, and he actually just emailed me a couple weeks ago, just letting me know that he still thinks about me, and that made my day to know that years later he's still thinking about me just like I am of him. That relationship that I built with him in third grade didn't end when he left my classroom.
So you've shared a lot of very special moments and personal moments and wonderful moments with your students. Is there something that a student has done in your classroom that has shocked you?
Like bad behavior shocked?
It doesn't need to be bad behavior, just was kind of startling or surprising.
I guess a lot of the shocking behavior would be more of out of the mouths of babes. The things that some of the kids say. Sometimes I have to bite my tongue, and even though I want to laugh or say, I totally agree with you, kid, like I've got to, be professional. Like there was one student I had, gosh, I think he might be a senior in high school now. But he was one, every time he opened his mouth, he just said it how it was. And I just wanted to be like, I am totally 100%, but you need to have a filter, and you need to realize like that's not okay to say. He just would say it how it was, and he just, every time he spoke, he shocked me, but he was hilarious. He's one of those that I probably would have been friends with.
Teachers deal every day with students and behavior, and managing the classroom is always challenging. What is one of those behaviors in your class that is just very frustrating for a teacher?
I'd have to say there's two. One is kids that constantly disrupt the learning environment. If that's talking out or bothering other kids, I just like to keep my classroom respectful of everyone needs a quiet space to learn and do their best. So when other kids keep other kids from learning, that's when I get frustrated. Another frustrating behavior would be when a kid is not motivated. It's not frustrating like I'm frustrated at them. It's frustrating as a teacher. I want to be able to help all kids. When I can't find what motivates them to do better or be better, that's frustrating for me as a teacher, that I can't help them find that intrinsic motivation to either be better in the classroom or be better as a person.
So I know that's very difficult and challenging to deal with those types of behaviors with students. What about parents? What are some things that you just wish parents would understand about whether it's the classroom or teaching or their own child? What's one thing that you would tell all parents if you had a chance?
So one saying that someone had once said to me that I think is absolutely wonderful is, I'll believe 50% of what your kid says to me about what happens at home if you believe 50% of what they say happens at school. There's a middle line, because even our own kids, when they come home, I'll never forget when Ty had to flip his paw for the first time. And he came home and he was all upset, and it wasn't his fault. It was the teacher's fault. And being a teacher, I said, well, tell me exactly what happened. And he said, well, Mr. Lemmer was yelling at me for something, and he said that I rolled my eyes, and that's why I had to flip my paw. And I said, well, tell me what happened. He's like, well, Mommy, he's just so tall that it looked like I rolled my eyes. So I knew that most likely there was, some truth to what he was saying, but also probably a lot of truth of what Mr. Lemmer said. So I made it a learning experience. I said, well, Ty, if he's really that tall, don't look up at him when he talks to you, so he doesn't think you're rolling your eyes. And I think that's one thing parents need to understand, is that we're dealing with a lot of little kids, and little kids, yes, they can come home and tell the absolute truth, but then sometimes they get mixed messages too. They're little. So I guess for parents to just, that we're a team, not two entities working against each other for the kid, but that we need to work together and realize that the kid is what matters. And there's always going to be a little bit of pull in each direction on that kid of wanting to please both parties, and for parents to, believe what their kid says, but also believe what the teacher says too.
So then would you promote communication in those instances?
Yes. Communication is the best. And especially for parents, if there's something that their kid comes home and tells them, don't perseverate on it and wait weeks and then let it build up and then tell the teacher. You got to tell the teacher right away. That way it can be dealt with right away, because letting weeks go by is not going to make it better for the kid or the parent or the teacher.
As a principal, I would definitely agree. Communication is always a benefit to the student, to the parent, to the teacher, to everyone involved. If everyone knows what's going on and you can communicate between home and the school, it's always going to be a positive outcome for your child and your student or our student. Let's talk a little bit about testing, whether it's state testing or it's some type of assessment in class. At your school, you're looking at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. What do you wish students would do to prepare themselves?
Well, there's a lot of different testing. If you're talking about the state testing or even just our diagnostic tests that we do, or our screeners or our universal testing, we call it. The biggest thing is get a good night's sleep the night before, charge your device if it's on a device, read the entire passage, use relaxing techniques if you're getting stressed about the test, or you get halfway through the test and your mind is done. Take a minute, take a couple deep breaths, then go back to the test. The other thing is, if it's a content test over stuff you've been learning, study. Don't just assume that because you've been in class, attending class, that you're going to know it. Look over the information beforehand and take your time. The other thing is advocate for yourself and ask questions. So if it's not one of those state tests where a teacher really can't help you beyond just the directions of the test, if it's a content test for science class or social studies class and the question isn't clear, ask the teacher for help. Teachers want to help you.
Thank you. That's good advice. Now, over the past 2 years, we all know that we've been dealing with COVID in the classroom, at home. Schools have been shut down. There's mask mandates, all these different things that are happening every day at school, at home, in our nation, in our world. As a teacher, what do you think the toughest thing has been about COVID? I know that we've talked a lot about numerous things about what makes it tough for families, for schools, for students. If you had to narrow it down to one thing, what would that be?
But in the elementary setting, the social interaction of kids. So for last year, I was one of the 3rd grade teachers that taught exclusively online the entire school year. It was hard for the kids. They interacted with me through Zoom, but there was not a lot of opportunity for them to interact with each other. Now that our district is no longer offering that online thing for this year, all of those kids are back in the building. And it's interesting to see how some of those kids adjusted perfectly fine socially. Then there's some kids that are still struggling socially, adjusting. I mean, it also wasn't helpful that last year being 3rd grade, it was the first year in my building. So they went from 2nd grade in a different building to 3rd grade online, and then into 4th grade where half of that 4th grade were together in 3rd grade making new friends. So they're almost kind of like a new student. So that social piece, along with that, the masks don't help with social skills. We have kids that already struggle reading nonverbal cues, and to teach them nonverbal cues. And we've had this discussion before. You take away, 3/4 of a person's face, that's a lot of nonverbal cues. So for a kid who relies on those nonverbal cues to be able to know a person's feelings, that makes it even harder for those students. For me this year, I have found very difficult the change of position from teaching reading to reading intervention. I'm doing a lot of phonics lessons where I need to enunciate the different sounds of letters or phonemes, and it's difficult wearing a mask, emphasizing those. So there's a lot of times I'm taking my mask off, making sure I'm distanced from a kid to be able to ensure that they're hearing the sound correctly, and that that's not what's creating it, that they don't know what sound to be writing down. I think that's something that we're going to be seeing as the years go on. Kindergartners that were learning phonics last year with masks and this year with masks, it'll be interesting to see when they get to third grade where their phonics skills lie.
We've talked a lot about several years of that going on and just how it's going to be increasingly difficult. Okay, one last question I have for you. If for some reason you weren't able to teach anymore, and you had the opportunity to do something else, something other than teaching, what would that thing be?
So I used to have a running list of things that I could do. I think every teacher has this thought of like, what can I do besides this? Not that I don't love teaching, but teaching is very draining. And during the school year, you don't work 40 hours a week. You're doing lesson planning and grading and, up all night doing all of those things that you can't get done during the day. I think every teacher at some point wonders, what else could I do? So some thoughts have been like jobs that don't exist, like professional scrapbooker. I can't do that though. So I think the other thing that recently in the last couple of years that have interested me is something along the lines of nutrition or some sort of health type thing, knowing that I've had health issues and I've had a great friend that has helped me through those health issues and gotten me to have some, great changes. I would love to be able to help people in that way also.
Thank you, Kelly, for joining me on this video. I appreciate all your answers. Every time we talk, I learn something a little bit new, so thank you. To those subscribers out there, if you have any questions or suggestions on questions that you would like me to ask different teachers, please list them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.